I told him the way he wanted me to call him daddy and beg was pathological. And everyone in our lives agreed with me until they didn't. That's the part people keep getting wrong when they hear Marcus left. They think I'm the villain because I couldn't embrace his twisted fantasies. But the real crime was how he made me feel like I had to perform some pornographic version of myself just to keep him interested. I'm not blameless here, not by a long shot, but you need to understand what actually happened before you decide I'm some kind of monster. The stakes were higher than just a breakup. I stood to lose the identity I'd spent 32 years building dependable Sarah, the girl who has it together, who doesn't need therapy or medication or whatever flavor of the month mental health crisis everyone else is having. My entire social circle was constructed around being the stable one. If Marcus's departure painted me as closed-minded or worse, abusive, I could watch my reputation dissolve in real time. Every friendship I had was predicated on my judgment being sound. But here's what I'm going to tell you, the thing I haven't said to anyone. Until right now, I knew exactly what I was doing every step of the way. The question isn't whether I regret it. The question is whether I do it again. The truth, the full, ugly, can't take it back truth, starts with a decision I made 3 weeks before Marcus moved out, when I found the ropes hidden in his golf bag. I'll get to that. But first, you have to understand how normal we were before his perversion infected everything. I met Marcus at a corporate retreat 5 years ago. He was in finance. I was in HR, and our compatibility scores on those stupid team-building exercises were supposedly off the charts. He wore pressed khakis and quoted Marcus Aurelius. I organized my bullet journal by color code and ran half marathons on weekends. We looked like a stock photo of a successful millennial couple. The first 2 years were a spreadsheet of shared goals: apartment, dog, joint checking account. I kept a Pinterest board called Our Future that had 200 pins and 47 followers. The first hint should have been the way he asked questions during sex, not demanding, just curious. Have you ever thought about being tied up? He'd whisper, and I'd laugh it off like he'd suggested we order pineapple on pizza. Weird but harmless. I told myself his kinks were a phase, something he'd outgrow once he realized how good we had it. When he bought that first silk tie, I tied it around his eyes as a joke, then felt my stomach turn when he moaned in a way that wasn't about me at all. That was hint number 2. The third hint was how carefully he stored his toys, the ropes, the cuffs, the stupid leather paddle he ordered from some artisan in Berlin. He treated them like sacred objects, polishing the hardware, coiling the ropes with precision. I found myself staring at his hands while he worked, thinking about how those same hands used to cradle my face with the same reverence. The shift was subtle but undeniable. His devotion was transferring from me to these objects, to the acts they represented. Small decision came after I found the book. It arrived in an unmarked box, something called The Ethical Slut, which made me want to vomit. I wasn't a slut, ethical or otherwise, and the implication that I needed to be one to satisfy him felt like a personal attack. Instead of confronting him, I shelved it with our cookbooks, spine facing inward. He asked about it 3 days later, and I said, "Oh, I thought it was a joke gift from Dan," which was plausible enough because Dan is an asshole. Marcus's face fell, and for the first time, I felt the power of withholding. That was the moment I realized I could control this narrative. At 10% through this mess, I made my most calculated mistake. I decided to document his problem for his own good. I started a private notes file on my phone called Marcus Concerns, timestamping every weird request, every time he made me feel inadequate for not wanting to participate. I told myself this was evidence I'd need if things got ugly, but really, I was building a case against a man who loved me, brick by brick, hoping the weight of my disapproval would crush his desires into dust. My sister called during week 7 of this project, asking why I sounded so distant, and I said Marcus was going through something. She assumed he was depressed. I let her think that. By 13% of the way into this story, which is to say about a month before the end, I'd curated a collection of evidence that would make any friend hate him, if I chose to share it. I became a master of the strategic pause, the loaded sigh, the concerned glance when his name came up in conversation. At a dinner party, someone asked how Marcus was doing with his new job, and I said, "Oh, he's keeping busy with his hobbies," while staring at my wine glass in a way that implied those hobbies involved things that would make our friends blush. The dramatic irony was that I thought I was being subtle. I thought the facade of the supportive girlfriend was intact. But people were already pulling away, uncomfortable with my obvious contempt for the man I supposedly loved. The first major revelation came when Marcus found my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. He wasn't snooping. He was bringing it to me because I'd left it charging next to the coffee maker. But the screen was still open to my notes file, and I watched his face drain of color as he read September 3 asked me to call him daddy again. Disgusting. Why can't he just want normal sex? He scrolled, and I saw him find the entry from October 12 thinking about telling his mother. She should know her son is a pervert. The truth bomb wasn't that he found the notes. The truth bomb was that he'd known about them for weeks before he said anything. He'd been watching me build my case against him, letting me dig my own grave with every self-righteous word. When I tried to defend myself, I was just processing Marcus. It's what my therapist suggested. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and horror that I'd never seen before. You don't have a therapist, Sarah, he said quietly. You've never been to therapy in your life. The relationship damage was catastrophic but quiet. He didn't yell. He moved into the guest room that night and started looking for apartments the next morning. I became defensive in a way that surprised even me, telling our mutual friends he'd become emotionally abusive, that his kinks were escalating into something dangerous. When his sister called to ask why I'd told their mother Marcus had a sex addiction, I said, someone had to intervene before he hurt himself. At 18% of the way through this disaster, the hidden action I'd taken earlier came to light. I'd emailed his boss's wife, who ran a prayer circle, suggesting Marcus needed spiritual guidance for his deviant urges. I thought I was protecting his career. He saw it as the ultimate betrayal. By 22%, someone discovered part of the truth. Not the full scope, but enough. Our friend Jenna saw me deleting messages from Marcus on my phone messages where he'd begged me to understand, to talk to him, to meet him in the middle. Why are you erasing the evidence that he's trying? She asked, and I froze. I'd been so careful to craft a one-sided narrative, but in that moment I realized I'd deleted the proof that he was a good man, leaving only my bitterness intact. At 24%, I teased that there was something even worse coming, and there was. But first, I had to watch him pack his things into boxes he'd gotten from the liquor store down the street. He labeled them meticulously kitchen, bathroom, books. I noticed there wasn't a box for his toys, and when I asked where they were, he said, Luna offered to store them until I get settled. The consequence escalation was swift and surgical. Luna. Of course there was a Luna. She appeared in his Instagram stories exactly 28 days after he moved out. Her purple hair and ironic t-shirts of visual assault on everything I'd tried to build with him. At 28% through this tragedy, the situation spiraled in an unexpected direction. Luna posted a photo of a rope harness tutorial with the caption, Learning New Skills with My Favorite Person. Marcus had liked it. His mother had liked it. His mother, who I'd called in tears about her son's problem, had double-tapped her son's girlfriend's kink-positive post like it was a picture of a sunset. I tried to fix things, of course. I sent Marcus a long email apologizing for my reactionary response to his needs, suggesting we try couples counseling with a traditional therapist. He replied in 3 sentences, Sarah, I've been seeing a kink-aware therapist for 6 months. She helped me understand that my desires aren't shameful. I'm happy now, and I hope you find peace. The failed attempt to come clean was in the postscript, where I admitted I'd told his mother about the ropes but left out the part about his boss's prayer circle wife. At 32%, I made my worst decision yet. Not the worst overall, that's still coming, but the worst up to that point. I created a fake Instagram account called Kink Safety Watch and used it to message Luna directly. Be careful, I typed, using a profile picture I'd stolen from a German sex educator. Marcus has a history of pushing boundaries without consent. I didn't have a single piece of evidence for this claim. I'd never, not once, felt unsafe with Marcus. But the dramatic irony was that in my desperation to maintain control, I was becoming the very abuser I'd pretended to protect people from. The breadcrumb about the ultimate secret came at 35%, disguised as concern. I found Luna's old Tumblr account from college, where she'd posted about experimenting with submission. I screenshotted it, but not to use it yet. Just to hold onto, a card to play when the time was right. I told myself I was building a case, the same way I'd built the case against Marcus. In reality, I was constructing my own undoing, piece by painstaking piece. The breaking point arrived like a tsunami, though I'd mistaken it for a manageable wave. I lost my job in HR 2 days after Marcus posted a photo of him and Luna at a kink conference, their arms around each other. both wearing leather bracelets I'd once thrown in the trash. My boss called me in, concerned about my online activity during work hours. At 42% of the way through this self-immolation, the major confrontation happened in the parking garage. Marcus's best friend David cornered me by my car. "I know it was you," he said, holding up his phone showing the fake Instagram account. "The IP address traces back to your building, Sarah. Stop harassing them or we're filing a restraining order." My support system crumbled at 48% when my own sister refused to let me stay with her after the eviction notice appeared on my door. "You didn't just shame him," she said over the phone. "You tried to destroy him for being happy. That's not a rough patch, Sarah. That's a you problem." The social validation gap was massive publicly. I was still posting inspirational quotes about growth and healing. Privately, I was using library computers to check Luna's Etsy shop, where she sold handmade paddles and floggers, each purchase a dagger in my carefully constructed sense of superiority. At 53%, someone got hurt by my continued deception, and it wasn't who I expected. My mother called, her voice shaking, saying she'd run into Marcus's mother at the grocery store. "She told me what you did, Sarah, about the prayer circle, about the fake messages. How could you?" Lashed out, telling my mother that Marcus's mother was lying, that she was covering for her pervert son. The silence that followed was the sound of my last ally realizing I'd rather burn every bridge than admit I was wrong. The direct question I had to answer, or deflect, came at 58%. "Marcus emailed me from a new address, Sarah. Did you forge text messages from Luna to me?" He attached screenshots of texts where Luna supposedly called him a freak who'd die alone, messages that had caused a 3-day fight between them before Luna proved they were fake. I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. The truth was yes, I'd used a text generator website, painstakingly matching Luna's typing style from her old Tumblr posts. I'd learned her cadence, her emoji usage, her habit of double spacing after periods. It was the most intimate connection I'd had with anyone in months. At 61%, I set up the biggest revelation by discovering Luna's security flaw. She auto-saved her passwords on the shared laptop she'd given Marcus, which he'd left behind in the storage unit we still co-rented. I wasn't supposed to access it, but the lock code was still our anniversary date, which felt like permission. I logged into her Facebook, her Instagram, her Gmail. I wasn't ready to use the access yet. I was just gathering intelligence, I told myself. Just preparing. The worst truth revealed itself slowly, then all at once. At 67%, when I couldn't stand the sight of their happiness for one more second, I sent Marcus a series of emails from Luna's account, not to him, but to a fake address I'd created. I wrote drafts, saved them in her drafts folder, then screenshotted them. The drafts said things like Marcus is so pathetic with his little rope collection, but his trust fund is worth pretending. I sent the screenshots to him from the Kinks Safety Watch account, saying your girlfriend is using you. The full confession is this: I didn't just shame Marcus for his kinks. I weaponized his deepest vulnerability, the fear that anyone who accepted them was either broken or exploitative. At 72%, the most damning detail came out. I'd created an entire false narrative that Luna was a findom targeting men in the kink community for money. I made fake PayPal receipts, fake messages about draining his wallet, fake everything. The level of detail was obsessive. I'd studied financial domination forums for 3 weeks to get the terminology right. When the revelation's first major consequence hit at 77%, it wasn't Marcus who filed the police report. It was Luna, with Marcus standing beside her at the station. The officer who took the statement was a woman with purple streaks in her hair, who looked at me with pure disgust when she reviewed the evidence packet. "This is calculated harassment," she'd said, and I wanted to scream that Luna was the one harassing me by existing so happily in my periphery. The final hidden element dropped at 80%. Marcus had known it was me from the very first fake message. The language patterns were too Sarah, he'd told the detective. The focus on shame over harm, the need to make him feel stupid for trusting anyone. He'd let it continue, gathering evidence, while I thought I was winning a war I'd already lost. He'd been documenting my documentation. The aftermath was a study in how thoroughly a person can delete themselves from their own life. I lost the HR job, obviously, but worse, I lost the ability to use anyone in that industry as a reference. The restraining order meant I couldn't attend any industry events where Luna might be present, which was all of them. My sister changed her locks. My mother stopped returning my calls. The social media dimension was the most brutal. Luna posted their engagement announcement exactly 3 months after the restraining order was finalized, and it got 700 likes. Marcus looked 10 years younger in the photo, his smile the kind of uncomplicated joy I'd never seen on him. At 85%, the unexpected consequence I hadn't anticipated was losing my therapist. Dr. Chen had been working with me for 6 weeks when she received a subpoena for my records. After reviewing my notes about the stalking and harassment, she referred me out, saying she couldn't treat someone who showed no remorse for predatory behavior. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I was the victim here, but the words tasted like ash. The cracks in my defensive armor were showing. Genuine self-awareness broke through at 89%, not in therapy, but in the parking lot of the courthouse where I'd gone to contest the restraining order. I saw them walking in, Luna's hand on Marcus's lower back, his head tilted toward her in a posture of absolute trust. I realized I wasn't scared of his kinks. I was scared that his kinks revealed something about him that was more authentic than anything I'd ever offered. I was a guest house pretending to be a foundation. The current state is this: I live in my car. I shower at a gym where no one knows my name. I tell myself I'm writing a memoir about the dangers of kink culture, but really, I'm writing this confession over and over in different parking lots, trying to find the version where I'm not the villain. Tonight, I'm parked outside the restaurant where Marcus proposed to Luna last week. The private room they rented is visible from the street, and I watched him get on one knee while waiting for a text message that will never come. I'm telling this story now because 3 hours ago, I saw them at a mutual friend's housewarming party. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I know the layout of that building, know which window looks into the living room. Luna is 6 months pregnant, her hand resting on her belly while Marcus demonstrates some rope work on a baby doll, everyone laughing, everyone happy. No one looked ashamed. No one whispered pervert. The host, my former best friend, handed them a gift bag labeled for the littlest rope bunny. Everyone cheered. So yes, I told him his kinks were weird. I told his mother, his boss, his entire world that there was something wrong with him. And he found someone who loves every part of him, even the parts I tried to carve out with shame. He won't come back, and the hell of it is, I don't even want him anymore. I want the version of him I broke, the one who would have stayed with a woman who hated his core self because he was that desperate to be loved. I want to undo his healing so I'm not the only one still bleeding. The moral ambiguity is this: I still think it's weird. I still don't understand why someone would want those things, would need those things, but I understand now that the sickness wasn't in Marcus's desires. It was in my need to be the arbiter of normal, my compulsion to control how someone else experienced love and pleasure. I told him his kinks were weird, and maybe they are. But my kink was control, and I didn't even know it until I'd destroyed everything. Judge me if you want. Tell yourself you'd never do what I did. But ask yourself honestly, if the person you loved asked you to step outside the neat little box you've built your entire personality around, would you gracefully open the lid, or would you nail it shut and tell them the problem is their need for air? I know my answer. I'm living in it, parked on a dark street, writing a confession no one asked for about a man who's finally free. The engine's getting cold. I should go. There's a 24-hour diner across town, where the waitress doesn't care if I nurse a coffee for 4 hours. And maybe tonight I'll find the words to explain why being normal felt so important that I'd rather be alone than be real. Or maybe I'll just sit there, ordering toast I can't afford, pretending this is a story about kinks when it's really about cowardice. Either way, Marcus isn't coming back. And deep down, in the part of me I'm still too scared to examine, I know that's the only happy ending this story was ever going to have.